Everybody, we're really excited to bring you our Swimrun NC race report from racing this weekend in Hanging Rock State Park in North Carolina. Time for a little bit of rock flute. Welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 146 of the show. On this week's show, we have a recap of our penultimate race of the season, Swimrun NC. Race directors Herbert, Jan, and Jeff put on an amazing event, and the positive swimrun vibes were in ample supply at Hanging Rock State Park in beautiful Danbury, North Carolina. This race was so much fun, but it was also super freaking hard, and we're stoked to share our race report for this quote-unquote unique event with all of you. So why don't we start with, I think, for this one in particular, I think it'd be helpful to talk about what our training prep and mental state was leading up to this, because I think it was markedly different from...
Yes.
Maybe Folsom was like this, where we were just like, all right, let's see what happens. But that was also like a super short race.
Yeah, Folsom was like that a little bit from like a race approach aspect. But last you heard from the Low Tide Boys potentially was our Attila Swimrun World Championship race report, which was early September 5th or 6th or 7th, something like that. So this is effectively, 6 weeks past that. And no secret, the World Champs was definitely our A race. So that was like capital A. And yeah, I mean, as time passed from Attila, Chris and I, obviously, we were talking regularly, in case that wasn't obvious. But personally, I just felt really exhausted, I guess is probably the best way to put it after Attila. Not just physically from the race and the training and the travel and all that stuff, but, it sort of felt like an odd end of like a marathon almost, that we didn't know we were really starting, so to speak. But when we first started the show, our goal wasn't like, oh, let's start the show and then go do the World Championship.
Our journey all the way
that's the goal of the show. But somewhere along the way, I don't really know where, it sort of turned into this thing of like, oh, we're really attracted to Attila, the Swimrun World Championship, and yeah, we want to do it. It's definitely high on our to-do list. But somewhere along the way, it turned into a thing that's what we were doing. And I mean, for this year in particular, we spent pretty much since the first week of February preparing for that race. And so that's like 7-8 months of prep and really intense focus and effort on a lot of different fronts for us. The show, training, thinking about it, work,
life,
all sorts of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I was pretty pooped after. I took probably 2 or 3 weeks off from any really structured activity, and I just slept in a lot. It was nice to just sleep in and not have to wake up and make sure I was at the pool really early and stuff, and maybe have an extra cookie if it was laying around, that kind of stuff. But anyway, that was sort of how I was feeling, but also really excited for Swimrun NC, but sort of knew that I wasn't going to be at the physical trained up as I was for Attila, but really excited for what NC was going to be. And I think you and we had talked a few times, Chris, and I felt that we were really aligned in our approach for this race, which, like Folsom, was, hey, let's go out there and let's have fun. We don't need to go and try to go hit a podium or some certain pace or time or anything like that. Let's go out there and see what happens. And
yeah, I mean, and I think from
my 2 cents.
From my side of the garage, it was like, as someone who's kind of just always kind of doing random feats of endurance, staying and our friend Sandrine pointed this out to me several times, is like she was really proud that I managed to stick with the training plan and be so committed to it, which I was for sure. But after the World Championship, I definitely felt like, I mean, I still had plenty of energy. I was super stoked on that race, and just went back to my usual devices. But it was nice to kind of feel like unshackled from the training plan commitment and take a couple weeks down and just kind of do whatever. And I think, and it was a little hard for me to get sort of mentally up for this race. Like one of the things that really gets me prepared for racing is sort of fear of the unknown, or want to make sure that everything goes well. And for this one, when you and I talked about it, I'm like getting this tattoo and it's preventing me from going swimming. This month, I think I've swam like 8,000 yards total or something.
Yeah.
Which I was almost doing that basically like every Tuesday kind of thing. So it was definitely a change. But I think our mental state going in was such that you kind of knew where I was coming from, what I was capable of on the swim. And we were just like, well, let's just see what happens. Let's try to do a good job and just enjoy it. And it definitely lived up to that. And I think in hindsight, after the race is a little bit foreshadowing for the final thoughts, but like it was a really fun way to race where we were just like, we have enough experience where, this was our 12th swim run where we're like, all right, well, let's just see what happens. We can make decisions on the fly. We're totally comfortable in our decision-making ability.
Let's shoot from the hip a little bit.
Not a big thing like, oh, who's going to lead the swims? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? We had some tactical discussions, but a lot of that kind of happened during the race, which was really fun. And I think in many ways, this was a consciousness raised swim run where we were still really present. We're pretty clear on what our sort of physical limitations might look like. But despite all that, we just did our thing, which was have a really good time out there.
Yeah. Mission accomplished.
For sure. But I think one of the really cool things about this trip is that we managed to link up with the Contra Boyz, which is the fourth time we've done a race with them.
It's sort of like, are we like creating like a super group?
Yeah,
we're like the traveling Wilburys of Swimrun.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. That's what it's like. So John of the Contra Boyz, his sister's in-laws, own this Carolina Zip Lines canopy tours, which is maybe 10, 15 minutes from Hanging Rock State Park. So John was like, yeah, we can just all stay there. And we're like, are you sure that's cool and everything? It's like, can we do some zip lining? So Keith and Barb were our hosts, and they were just
gracious hosts.
Delightful people. They have 26 grandkids.
So many grandkids, they have like a chart on the wall that had them all listed. They had January through December, and they had all the dates.
Birthdays.
Because there's no way you that's too much mental load to try to keep that in your head at all.
Yeah, they were amazing hosts, and they didn't even know Swimrun was happening. Right up, they were really surprised, like, oh, this race happening right here.
Yeah.
This is amazing. So, but they came out to cheer and stuff, which was really fun.
Awesome.
Also, we got to give a little shout out to Bethany, which was one of our guides when we went ziplining.
Yeah, so we flew in from SFO, landed in NC at pretty much midnight local on Eastern, and we got to this house at pretty much like 1 a.m. And the next morning at 9:30 we were up, strapping up, getting ready to go ziplining. Put it on Strava too.
Yeah, I haven't ziplined in years and years, so it was super fun. And Keith and Bethany were our guides, and yeah, it was a really interesting way to kind of start like a race weekend, because after that we essentially headed to Packet Pickup and then to do our combo Low Tide Boys, Team Envol Spamfika, the Adorkables, Wild Swim Run. Collab shakeout.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fun.
And Fika,
of course.
So, that was a great time. The weather was warm.
It was warm.
So when we were peeping the forecasts and deciding, wavering between which of the 10 suits we should bring and how many of the 10 suits should we bring, we had all heard the stories about last year's Swimrun NC about high sort of DNF rates, extreme cold water temps, air temps, so people getting frozen, turning into Swimrun popsicles out there. But this year it seemed like it was a different story, so we packed a little bit different. But the shakeout, I was excited to kind of see what the water was going to be like and all that stuff. Yeah. But Marcus, obviously being a resident, it's not his first time in Hanging Rock State Park.
Yeah,
so
I think he's done all of them. Every single.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. A wealth of experience there from Marcus Barton, and took us out on just a quick little sub-mile run out to what's been coined as Sexy Rock. Now, if you just went by this rock, you might not be overcome with how sexy it was, but there's a whole backstory on that. You'll have to talk to Team Adorkable.
Yeah, and I think like sexiness in general, it's what you make of it.
Yeah, it's the beauty, the sexiness is in the eye of the beholder. That's for humans, and that's for rocks too.
Yeah.
So we ran out there, and then some folks went to did a little juke over to the Dan River, which is where the final swim was going to be. So we kind of had what was that? Probably like a 400-yard float swim down the river, which it was chilly. I mean, it wasn't like warm.
Yeah, it was chilly, but it was also like it was extra hot that day. So
it also felt good.
Yeah, it was nice to just get in the element and just be like, all right, this is what it's going to be like. Also, the water was super, super shallow. But shout out to one of the race directors, Herbert, who when we told him we are going to do the Shakeout Fika, he was like, hold on, guys. I got this. Mm-hmm. And he provided all this fika, so which is like pastries upon pastries, really amazing pastries. So thank you so much for that. And as usual, met a bunch of people. I think there was like some 30, 35 folks who came out for the shakeout.
It
happened to be sort of right before the mandatory race briefing. So it was kind of a little bit of a captive audience there.
Optimized for attendance.
Yeah. So as usual, we try to remember everyone we met and try to do a shout out. So let's just go down the list real quick. Obviously, always great to see the Adorkables and Team Envolspan Fika, who we've pretty much have seen at every race this year.
Yes. Adam and Matt, the Jersey Buoys.
Such a great name.
Great name.
Sebastian and George at the Radberg. Great to see them and hang out a bit.
Yep. Caleb and Joe.
Had an awesome race, those two.
They did, yes. Right on the podium there.
Yeah, Tristan Pike, who subbed in at the last minute to race with our friend Mike. That's a great story. She was going to volunteer, and Mike's partner, Liza, who they've been on the show before, just couldn't do it.
Didn't work out, yeah.
couldn't make it happen. And Tristan just stepped right in. They had an awesome race.
And hot off their wildly fun experience at Odyssey's Orcas race, Sarah and Viv from the Traverse Fitness Crew in Colorado.
Yeah.
The next swim run available, they were there.
Awesome. And it was funny because we're still going to do like a Zoom call with them, but when you have so many people show up at a race, it's like you're wondering, like, obviously not all of them are going to get super stoked.
Yeah.
But Sarah and Viv, they caught it.
They got it. They're super stoked. For sure.
Yeah. Brett Ward from Chicago. It was great to meet him in person and chat him up a little bit. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon.
Yes. Mark and Christian, a.k.a., and this is a great team name here, Team AARP and Barely Legal. So Mark raced with Christian, who was literally half Mark's age. I think he was 21 or 22 or something like that. So such a great, again, another really cool reason why swimrun is such a great sport. You can have people who are half your age, and you can have a fun adventure with them out there.
Mark also did Rockman, which I was like, damn, amazing. The ladies from Phyllis Hold My Shower Beer. It's great to meet them in person.
Yes.
Jen and Bridget.
Yes, always love running into Will Ramsey and his partner Coleman. They had a great race out there. We only see Will on the East Coast, though.
Yeah.
We need to make him come out to the West Coast.
Exactly.
Out there.
And I know I'm sure we missed people, so we're sorry if we didn't include you, but really appreciate everyone coming up and taking photos and taking stickers. I mean, these shakeouts are kind of becoming a thing, and it's just so great. They're so great. I love them.
Yeah, we really keep getting such tremendous positive feedback from this, so that's why we keep doing it. We don't know if it's because the swimrun part or the Fika part, so that's why we keep them together, because that way we won't have to find out which one it really is.
Yeah,
so we get to race day?
Yeah, so we did the mandatory race meeting, very straightforward. The next day, race morning, we got up at a reasonable time. Again, we were staying so close. It was actually
15
nice.
minutes away. It was great.
We didn't have to get up super early. Everyone kind of did their rituals. We got to the race, and yeah, it was a little bit colder than it was the day before. Overcast. Turned out to be overcast basically the whole day, which was, anyone who's running in a black suit appreciates that.
Yeah, we'll take that. So
yeah.
Let's talk about kind of our gear a little bit on this one as we go down. I brought 3 suits. I had brought the Orno X with arm sleeves, just in case, who knows, a glacier melted and it froze the waters down. I brought my Uta sleeve, the Uto Air, the sleeveless wetsuit from Arc, their new one, and then the Vig, Chris's favorite.
Yes.
Still want my VJ Ultra 2 shoes, my Keel Buoy, Keel Plus, Frank paddles, of course, same kind of goggles set up. We did get a new tether, where Chris constructed a new tether for us. We felt, for some reason, for no reason in particular at Attila, that this one was getting a little long in the tooth. Needed to be retired.
I mean, it had all these knots from where it was too long and stuff, so I kind of got a bug in me after the World Championship to be like, it's new tether time. And honestly, I love the new tether. Less crap. It was a little bit thinner.
I was also thinking during Attila, I couldn't stop thinking about how much of the poop from the poop swim at Attila had seeped into the tether and then contaminated it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why the fresh tether.
I mean, it was so contaminated, the tether didn't even make it into the shelf of fame, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
The shelf of fame. Of
but you ended up going with the Uto Air,
yeah,
and lubed the neck and arms pretty heavily, and it seemed to work out. I mean, you didn't cab down
at all.
You just unzipped on the runs. And
so, gear is something that we're always testing out and everything here, and nothing new on race day kind of thing. But I've sort of taken the stance on the next few races, Swimrun NC and Austin. Going to try out a little bit of a different setup than I normally would, just to see how it goes. But yeah, the Uto Air, first time with the sleeveless wetsuit, so I was looking forward to see how that was going to go.
Yeah, and I raced in the Vig, which, I mean, I just love that suit. Any opportunity I can wear it.
Yeah,
I will, and it worked out really well. Again, didn't have to cab down. I did bring arm sleeves and just kept them in my back pocket, and they just stayed there the whole time, just in case things got a little weird. And that's maybe my own little paranoia because, I don't want to get cold as much as the next person, but I know that suit really well, and I know that I won't need to cab down for the most part, and I didn't.
Yeah.
So I think I was really happy. Sort of
we were
maybe a mile into we'll get into this, but a mile into the first one, I was very happy with my gear choice.
Yeah, because we were optimizing. We knew this race featured long runs to get out to all the sort of swimrun business out up at the lake. So we knew there was going to be multiple 5+ mile runs in there, including hill climbing and very technical running. So didn't want to have to think about trying to cab down. So that's sort of how we were thinking about optimizing our gear setup for this one in particular. What's the lighter weight setup that we can go with that won't require so much cabbing?
Right, exactly. And we'll get into a leg by leg breakdown here in a second. But essentially, the way we were thinking about tactics was there's essentially 3 runs, all of which are really beefy, and then a lot of, as you mentioned, swimrun business in the middle. And we definitely wanted to make sure that we weren't getting cooked on the runs, but also we're trying to just be efficient with everything, which I think we ended up doing a really good job, which we'll talk about it in the leg by leg breakdown. But why don't we just get right into that?
So we all bundled up into the start race. The timing was really cool. They had a great screen with the countdown. Herbert was there, and when we first saw him, he had a yellow race director bib on, and he had
running tights,
running tights, very very Euro vibes.
And I'll admit, at 7:15 in the morning when he came up to say hi to us, I'm like, "What is this dude doing, man?" Why is he
man, he's really into race directing. He's got running tights on.
That's with the tights.
And we'll allude more to that a little bit later. But we kind of bundled up normally where we were. We, as we tend to do, we re-listened to our own voices on the plane ride over our the course preview for Swimrun NC that happened last year, and Marcus and the Boston Wet Sox and Herbert all contributed to that. So it was really great to get a refresher on that. So one thing we wanted to do was not get kind of caught up in a conga line on the single track. We also know we don't need to be the first team out there, but we just didn't want to be sort of blocked up behind a big group of people where we couldn't get by if we were feeling good.
Yeah, and I think, so run 1 was essentially 4.5 miles from the Ale House up to Hanging Rock Lake, where the first round of swimrun business was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, let's just be steady and, let's just move and kind of try to keep it in our pants, but still kind of get towards the seat ourselves
no
so that
man's
we're
land.
not get stuck. Yeah, as we usually get into, but basically get to the point where we can just move in whatever speed we want without getting a bottleneck. But yeah, the race started and all plans went to shit because
it
started off hot.
It was hot, like out of a cannon. People, I mean, I swear they were like sprinting. And I'm like, didn't everyone get the memo? We're taking it easy.
Yeah.
So immediately one team shot way off the front. We caught up with them later. They were running 5-minute miles up at the front. Then there was another secondary front pack that was going also very fast.
They were doing sixes.
They were doing sixes.
And I looked down, so it's like a gravel road, like first half miles of gravel road, and then you kind of start getting into the woods, into single track. Until we got to single track, like you and I were doing sevens, which we're like,
which is a little bit hot for us, I think.
So this is the first instance of several where I think we made a very interesting tactical decision where I knew that I was pretty trained up for the climbing. I think maybe a little bit more so than you were.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, for this first run, I was like, I'm just gonna let Chipper be in front. I'm just gonna let you dictate the pace because otherwise, knowing, know thyself.
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to be full of piss and vinegar, and I was like, well, this is a good way to kind of like, I don't want to blow Chipper out.
Yeah.
I also want to keep this in control. And I think you did an awesome job because the pacing was great. We made her move at some point, but not until like maybe halfway through that run where we're like started being like, all right, let's just start passing some people.
Yeah, I thought it was good, and I also was like, oh, I'm in front here. Let me just keep going.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for me, you're kind of running at this slow grade up, and you're running uphill, but it's undulating and everything. And we were running, and we were actually ended up kind of sorted behind team Phyllis Hold My Shower Beer for a bit.
Super fun.
Which was really fun to run and race with them for a little bit there. And after the really hot start, it was kind of good we were behind them for a bit, and I was kind of like, okay, let my heart rate come down. Let's kind of ease into this, and let's put it in cruise control because we still have 3 miles, 2.5 miles to go.
Right. Plus, Jen and Bridget are super experienced. I mean, they podiumed this race multiple times. It's like if they have a manageable pace, like I'm sure they know what they're doing.
We'll just hang out here. And then there ended up being a good spot to kind of squeak around, and we ended up kind of making that move, if you will, and sort of proceeded up to the lake. But I think we nailed.
You did several good deeds. I think Bridget or Jen dropped her swim cap, and you picked it up.
Scooped it right up.
I think it was Jen who just dropped herself. She tripped on something.
Falled.
And you were right there and picked her up, which was super cool. And yeah, I mean, I think one thing, we probably won't mention this enough, but just how picturesque and beautiful everything was. Like
it was incredible.
There was a bunch of creek crossings. There's a sexy rock. These little waterfalls. I mean,
the leaves are spectacularly fall.
It was something
colored.
It was really, really beautiful. Yeah. So we kind of finished that run, feeling pretty good. Stoke levels high. We get to the lake. We see Concho boy John's family, who his sister lives in North Carolina. She came with her 3 nieces. Barb was there, and John's wife Amanda. And so we basically had a cheering station, which was always
awesome.
super fun. Always super fun. So we get to that first aid station. We take nutrition, and then we get into this little circuit where it's essentially like a 0.2 mile run, a 25-yard swim, a little bit more of a run, and then a 500 meter or 600 yardish swim, and you do that twice before we head towards Moore's Wall. And I think those swims, I was really concerned about my swim again because I've swam very little, but yeah, I was fine. I led the short swims and you led the long swims. It worked out great. I will say, like, for me, always let me just get through that first transition, and I like once we did that transition, like my energy levels just immediately just like shot up. I went from like a 7 to like a 9, just being like, all right, here we go. We're swim running now. And I also think that those first transitions, it foretold what was going to be a good day, at least in terms of transitions.
Yeah.
Like, our transitions were tight.
Yeah.
Super
smooth
tight.
like butter.
Like we were I don't know if you remember this. This is a little foreshadowing for later. Like we were talking about on the last run, on how the race has been going, and you're like, and we're like, oh man, our transition was so good. It's like, we're putting on a clinic. We're here just putting on a transition clinic for people. It was so funny.
I was pumped about it, I guess.
Yeah, but those transitions, the fact that those first 2 transitions were just like money, just seamless, just in and out, like no problem, running up and just keep going. Like I was like, okay, this is so much fun. Like,
and we came out a little spicy from the first little 25-meter swim, and there was a cameraman there. This race had the most photographers I've ever seen at really cool
They knew
things.
where to be.
There's waterfall areas, there's logs to go up, things like that. That I actually got reprimanded once. There was a very specific direction for some of these things, and I kind of went around a tree, and they're like, no, go over here. So I didn't realize.
Oh, yeah, on one of the
waterfalls. But the waterfall was cool. That was on the first run there, and I actually let the water get on me because it kind of felt nice to cool down like that. But
for sure.
Yeah, again, I'll echo your stuff there. I feel like that first transition into swim is sort of the big icebreaker that we need for races of like, hey, we know how to do this. Let's just go. Let's have fun.
Yeah, and
that's when the fun started for sure.
Yeah, I mean, start a race with a 4.5 mile run. I mean, that's I guess it's like Catalina. I think Catalina was like a 4 mile run to start.
Yeah, it did have a big run.
But yeah, so we pretty much had either verbally or inaudibly communicated to each other that you were going to be leading the long swims.
Yeah, it was assumed.
So we kind of got there and did that first swim, and I thought that went really well. I was really happy that I wasn't like sort of dragging ass in the back.
Yeah,
and that's another one where really good line. The swimming was cool. I mean, going into the race, I was like, oh, this is kind of like, I mean, not super interesting that you're essentially doing the same swim like 4 times.
Yeah, like a circuit situation.
But the swims were great. The water wasn't gross. I think I was telling you after, is like at least the water was nice and clear, because if the water was gross after that first time, you're like, I got to do this 3 more fucking times.
Yeah, for sure. But it was nice. And I mean, I will say, I feel like in this quote unquote training block, I probably skipped more swims in this 4 to 6 week training block than the whole 7-month Utsala training block. But obviously our swim fitness was incredibly robust from Utsala. I think we were probably doing 20,000 yard weeks there for a while. So we felt good about that, but it was a really fun kind of opportunity. Like, okay, 500, really just give it the gas every time. And that was really fun to be able to do, because that's not normally how we're able to do the swim. So I enjoyed that from leading that out, and there was opportunities to be more sort of racy with the line that you took, or there was always teams to kind of chase down or try to pull away from, and I just sort of enjoyed that piece of it from the swim perspective. But
and that transition, the first transition, the transition coming out of that first swim, like there were some teams that were kind of like fiddling around with stuff, and we just came out like
we were a shot of a can.
Like we were. This is a terrible analogy, but like Max and Hugo, man, like we just came out and started like running up.
Why
this
offend
thing.
them? Why are we offending them?
I guess we are offending them. Sorry, guys. But like we came up, and even like the spectators, people were like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, we were hungry. I was like ready to get out and do another loop. I'm like, time for Chris to lead a swim here. 25
Let
yard
me get my
splash.
Swim. So that second loop. This is a funny story. We started coming up on some teams that were going on their first loop, and at that first swim, we saw Mike and Tristan, and I think a couple other folks.
The Traverse.
Oh, was it Sarah and Viv?
I think so.
And we're like, oh, hey guys, and they're kind of getting their stuff sorted. And I just look back at you, and I'm just like, let's just
go through it, yeah.
And we're like, hey guys, how's it going? We jump in, we swim across, we get out, we do again another beautiful just like climb up and go, majestic. Great word, Chipper. And I kind of look back, and all 4 of them, they were just looking at us.
Like, whoa.
They were just like, like just looking at us. So that was super cool, and it was great to see them. And it was that was great because we started seeing like more people, because really quickly we kind of got into this little no man's land. But we do that, the second 25 swim, the second 500 meter swim, and then we get on the trail that's going up towards Moore's Wall. Mm-hmm. And this was pretty much a huge climb.
600 plus steps and
642 steps, which I'm questioning. I had some questions about like how they're figuring out what the step count is, because some of them look like steps and some of them were also just like, I don't know,
platforms.
Yeah. So
I wasn't counting to
to
600. That's for damn sure. But
yeah, that was a pretty steady climb. We stayed tethered up that climb. We didn't really tether on the first run until we got sort of to the lake area.
This was our least amount of tethering, I would say.
Yeah, we tethered to the top of Moore's Wall, which is amazing. There was a team ahead of us, and again, we weren't trying to burn all the matches. I was full of piss and vinegar for sure. So I think tethering was good because I kind of knew where you were at, and we didn't get too separated.
Yeah, and we actually kept it pretty steady because you climb up and you do this loop, but then you still, and this Herbert was really driving this point home. You need legs for coming back down Moore's Wall and then back down to the Green Heron Ale House for the finish. Down to the Dan River where you jump in. And so that was something that we were kind of making sure consciously that we knew. And yeah, I mean, my strength has never really been hill climbing. Maybe I'll change that this off season, but I think we took a pretty good steady clip. I mean, I looked at my heart rate stuff on Strava after. I mean, it was like definitely tempo running, if not tempo plus. Up there, we kind of hiked it out and for some part. And yeah, the team in front of us, I think we had made some headway on them in the swims. Like we made up some good thing in the swim. And I'm like, okay, we have one more circuit to go. And I feel like if we, not that our goal is to pick off teams or whatever, but it's a fun little carrot to chase during the race. It makes for something exciting. And so I'm like, if we could just kind of keep them sort of in our sights, I think we can kind of nip them on maybe one of these swims. But we actually, I feel like the whole way up, we kind of kept they would get out in front for a little bit, and then we would kind of reel them back in, or maybe they would start hiking more or whatever. But very hard. You couldn't get into a great cadence on the steps. So one thing that I really thought was a good move, where we could, Chris would like go up on the side where there was a trail, and we would just run up past like 10 steps because it was. It's just hard to get a cadence. It was hard to get into a rhythm.
Yeah, instead of making it like a Stairmaster thing, it was more just kind of like running up a trail. Yeah, and so you kind of pop out on Moore's Wall, and it's just like. We're just like, damn, this thing is amazing.
It was amazing.
Herbert was there. There was a photographer there, so we took a picture, and we actually took a picture with the team that was ahead of us. They're like, hey, can we take a picture? You guys like,
of course,
sure,
no
bring it in, buddy.
Yeah, you're like, you got to let us go first, though. And they didn't. And then they just took off.
Yeah, they like took off on the downhill. I was being super careful on the downhill. So my, if you can call it kryptonite, is sort of overcast where there's
roots.
Where there's roots and then there's like sort of fallen leaves on top. Like for my depth perception just has a problem with that, even though I was wearing contacts. I mean, if I didn't have that would have been a huge problem.
That would have been an issue.
So we start running down, and I'm being careful, and I'm also trying to be really conscious about not cooking the quads because I was trying to be kind of light on my feet and just not like be pounding all the way down. And I think mission accomplished on that. But what was really cool is we finally figured out why Herbert was wearing his tights on, because I don't know how many miles he ran. He probably ran like
a 30K at least.
Definitely, because he basically ran down with us, chatting us up, was taking videos, was explaining what kind of was coming up on the course, and it was really great to chat with him and talk about his ultra that he's doing in Mexico in a couple weeks and stuff. Yeah. It was really fun.
It was such a unique, I mean, this race, it said it on the back of the cap. It's a unique race. Yeah. This is truly it. And I've never raced with a race director who was doing, that'd be like Lars, like coming along and chatting us up. But it was really cool to chat with Herbert. I mean, we don't get to chat with him enough as it is, but
yeah, and it
was great,
and it was cool. And then at one point he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go catch the next team and run with them a little bit." And I guess he did that with the Contra Boys too. He was just basically like orienting people, making sure everyone was having a good day.
I mean, I think he had the most fun. I'm not gonna lie. I think Herbert might have had the most fun at anybody out there.
Absolutely. So we're running down Moore's Wall, and
very technical on the first
super
half.
Technical. Yeah, and honestly, there was a lot of vibes. We're talking about this. There was vibes from trails that we run all the time. So if you know the Novato trails, if you want to come check them out, just let us know. Big trees, a lot of big trees.
One of our favorites,
vibes.
Chris and I's favorites here.
Even some Attila vibes and just
the
sort
rocks,
of like the rocky terrain. So we definitely felt super comfortable there. And when we're coming down, that's where we made sort of our first technical decision or tactical decision, where there was a little aid station as we were heading back to do the second circuit around
the lake.
And the team in front of us, who we'd kind of caught up with, so like they passed us, and then another team passed us.
Yeah, so we did get passed on the descent by, I think they were Swedish or something, or maybe
one of the guys was Swedish. His name was Per. I don't remember his last name, but yeah, it was funny because we were bib 207, and it was like the team in front of us was 206, and the team behind us was 208.
Yeah, we're like, okay, 208, don't pass us. We'll have a perfect
exactly.
6, 7, 8.
So they are bombing down the downhill, which was like, have at it, Haas. But team 206, they stopped at this little tiny aid station. It was just like a water station before kind of like the main aid station. And you and Chipper, you were saying is like, I need to get some water. And I just looked back at you, and I knew you need water. I was like, let's just get it at the next one, which
was maybe less than a quarter mile away. So I was like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, maybe even like an eighth of a mile. I mean, it was really close, and that ended up being a pretty decisive move because team in front of us had sort of drank some water, and then they were just like walking it out a little bit, and we just blew right past, like they didn't probably even see us pass them. We just like blew right past them. And then we still had the team 208 in front of us, got our aid, did our transitions, and then basically passed them on the first 500-yard swim.
Yeah, so that first 500-yard swim, I was like, okay.
I guess the third 500.
Yeah, it would have been the third one, but the first one back from the return from being at Moore's Wall, which we swooped up a little bracelet there, and the photo that we took at the top, like the scenery has been so amazing.
It's kind
of
surprising.
Day.
You get up there, like,
damn. You climb up, and they're like, "Oh, go over here," and you walk out, and it's like the whole valley like opened up to you, and it was just in a really picturesque. And I'm like, again, they make you take it's mandatory photo you have to take at the top. Which, if they didn't make it mandatory, I'm sure half the people would take it, but
yeah.
Like, thanks for just making everyone stop and do it, because it was a great time. And we finished 30 seconds faster. Yeah, but who cares if everyone's doing it? Doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
So that first swim, we literally kind of got into the water with them at the same point that the 208 team.
Yep.
And in my head, I'm like, okay,
did your thing.
Let me put a good effort in here. Let's see if we can make some space. Just went out more gas than I had given any swim this year, I believe, on that one. So I really gave it the piss. And I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling good. I wanted so badly to like turn around and check to see how much distance we've done. I guess just a confidence, self-esteem booster for myself. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see a red swim cap, which is the men's, just like coming by me at a really fast clip. And my first thought was, damn it, I did so much work, and they're just taking it back this easy. Like, it was like nonchalant they were going by, and I look, I'm like, wait a second, I'm like, that's Beak.
So they came up very
stealthily,
very smart swimming. So they were on their final loop
of the circuit
before heading of the circuit, and they came up right behind us, used our wake, and then kind of came around us, and I saw them go by, and I'm like, oh, that dude's wearing a VIG. I only know one other person that's wearing a VIG. And I was like, Chipper's going to figure this out too. And then I saw Marcus, and he was wearing his signature USA goggles. And I'm trying to chat with him, and he's like not even trying to talk. I'm like, hey, Marcus. So like in between strokes, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Like every time I take a breath, Marcus. And he was just ignoring me. Maybe he wasn't,
Marcus
he was busy.
Also went with the Uto Air, and I saw his
tap
sleevelessness, and I'm like, oh, that's Marcus.
Yeah. So they passed us, and they were crushing it. They had an awesome race, and they transitioned out.
Yeah,
like
they were going, and I'm like, ooh, and we follow everyone on Strava, so it's no secret to me that Beak and Marcus are substantially better swimmers than us. But I'm like, let me see, just for funsies, how long I can hold on the feet of these guys. The top 10 men's team at Attila World Championship. Let's see how we can hang. So did that a little bit, maybe kept on Marcus's feet for 25 meters or something, and then there started to be like a gap, and then I'm like, well, I could like totally blow up here.
Yeah.
But yeah, they pulled out in front, and then they took off back to Cascade Falls, but we still had one more loop there.
Right.
But mission accomplished. We had put a little gap into the team behind us, which was, I feel like as the race kind of went on, we kept having all these really positive like affirmations, like, oh man, that first run we paced it really well. Oh, the Moore's wall climb, we paced it really well. Oh, the swimming's been strong. Our transitions, like a bunch of good like confidence kind of builders
my
as the race
aren't
went
falling
on.
Off even after not swimming for
our gear choices were good. Like, oh man, the water's not too cold. I'm not having a bad time in the suit. Our shoes are working really well. Like, it just started unfolding to be a really fun time and a lot of positive
plus
things coming through.
Basically had family there,
the hot corner.
Adopted family. So we had like, bunch of people there cheering us on, which was always really great. So we do the last swim of the circuit, and then we start heading down, basically the longest run of the day, which is run 10. It's 5.7 miles, getting all the way down back to the Dan River with a little kind of out and back to check out these waterfalls that were super cool.
Really cool, yeah. And a little, you got to cross paths a little. So if there was teams maybe 2 minutes or less in front of you, you would have maybe been able to see them. And I think we saw
a couple teams.
There.
We saw a couple teams, and I think that's where my energy levels were still pretty high, gelling every 20, 30 minutes.
Same.
And I think that's where you were like, maybe your energy level like dipped a little bit when we were coming back out of Cascade Falls to get back on sort of the main trail to head back down. But it seemed like you managed to get
there was
sorted.
One of the circuits, I forgot exactly when, like my hamstring really kind of got like locked up feeling, and I'm like, just go through it. But it felt like, one of those things where it can really you would have to walk it out sort of thing, which I didn't want to happen. So I actually fueled up, gelled up. We stopped at the water thing, made sure I had that, but just really kept on top, still going with the precision hydration PFH stuff, jumbo gels there. And then, we didn't tether for that way down the hill, which, again, sort of we're big proponents of the tether, but the technical nature of the terrain sort of dictated that we not. So we held on to that, and I think it actually kind of worked out for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think running back down, it was pretty technical, but still pretty runnable, but a lot of sort of left, rights, up, downs, kind of like skirting around trees. And at that point, I was like, I'm just going to try to maintain like a pretty steady effort and sort of consolidate whatever place we were in.
Yeah.
And a little bit foreshadowing, ends up like we ended up putting like 10 minutes on those two teams that we had passed.
Yeah.
And really didn't see them until they had a photo finish. Like they came
race.
out of the water at the same time.
I know.
Damn. Which is just pretty awesome. But yeah, so we kept running down. There was only one spot where I took a wrong turn and I stopped right away, and Chipper and you stopped me and you're like, wait a second, is this the thing? I'm like, where is this sign? It's like, oh, that's an official sign of the thing.
It's official park signage.
Official park sign. It's not part of the race. And so we got that sorted, and maybe we lost like 10 seconds or something. But that was,
whatever.
That's where like experience, which is like, hey, I have something to say here. The other person needs to stop and listen and be like, are we sure about this?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Let's really quickly make a tactical decision here.
Because the park was open, too. So there was people hiking. It was a little bit early. It was also Sunday, but you could hear voices, and see kind of people through the trees. You're like, well, is that racers or are these people just coming out for their Sunday hike sort of thing? But, we were not tethered on that, and you were keeping a good clip up front, and I was behind you further than the tether probably normally would have extended to. Mm-hmm. But it felt manageable for me, and I'm like, okay, as long as Chris doesn't like, start taking off. But you were good, and you even turned around and asked me if we wanted to tether, and I was like, I feel pretty good right now. So
just kind of like checking in and making sure that you were there, but also like really conscious of like, hey, this is the last run. Like, I want to push this a little bit and like make sure that you're emptying, that we're both kind of emptying the tank, which got us down to the last swim, which was 900 meters, so almost like 1,000 yards in the Dan River. Longest swim of the day.
We knew it was going to be colder. The coldest.
It was going to
swim.
be colder. We knew it was going to be like pretty shallow at points from the day before, and this is where I'm still suffering from my injury.
You're still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was giving my wife the race report, and I was like, oh, yeah, right here. And she was like, oh, right here. And she touched it, and I was like, oh, damn. And she's like, are you messing with me right now? I'm like, no, it actually hurts. So super shallow. Chipper's leading the swim. This is also
crazy current.
This was also like, I should say, this was the transition that wasn't as graceful because we both had to pee really badly.
Yeah,
so we
I mean, for some reason I had been holding this pee since probably the first run, and it was just
a long time. Dude.
Yeah, and
healthy.
I mean it. Yeah, if anyone saw the water levels rising, that's why.
That's
so much.
So we start the swim and we're tethered, which I don't know if that was a good idea or not, to be honest, but we're tethered. We're going down. Chipper's leading. It's getting super shallow point. You're almost like sculling, doing like a sculling drill at points.
I couldn't. You can't take like a proper stroke. There was even times where I literally had my hands out, not swimming, and the current was just taking me really quickly down the river. But I was sort of like, like in a scene from Star Wars, I was like trying to dodge these giant rocks in the thing, but one I didn't dodge, or I dodged it, but it caught Chris right in the chest.
So literally I'm swimming or trying to swim, and I get this rock that basically punches me right in the chest. I don't know how. I'm glad I didn't get my face for my Puerto Rican vanity's sake, but it hurt really. I stood up and I was like, this freaking hurt. It still hurts. So I got like a bruised sternum or something. It hurts so bad. I was
That's
like,
brutal.
oh my God. But it's like, hey man, got to get this thing done. I didn't think anything was broken. I did sort of like the arm test. I had full range of motion. I was just in pain. So we got back in and we just kept going. And honestly, I will say, didn't mention this before, but I was wearing the Adidas Terex Speed Ultras, which is sort of the shoes is all the rage.
It's all the rage.
The grip was awesome. You're wearing your VJs, so we already know the grip was awesome. But after the first run, the first wet thing that I stepped on and it held, I was like, this is great. This is going to be fantastic. So really good grip the whole time, except for that last swim exit. It was
there was a lot of stuff.
It was current. There was a lot of kind of weird rocks on it. That was the one where it was kind of sketchy. But yeah, we basically got through that swim. Seemed really fast because the current was pretty strong. I mean, you probably could have put your pull buoy like on your chest and just kind of floated on down.
Yeah. And so we got out and we had gotten in, and there was a team probably 100, 200 yards in front of us.
Yeah, mixed team.
But I guess we were swimming with the current, and so we kind of caught a little bit. And then when I saw the finish or the exit, I looked up and they were maybe 25 yards ahead. And I looked, they were a mixed team, and I'm like, I looked at Chris and I'm like, do we want to really, because the race was pretty much over at that point. You go up 12 steps and then you run like yards. A 50 yard to the finish line. And I'm like, I looked at Chris, I'm like, are you trying to get a sprint finish in here? Or, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Right. It doesn't matter to us. And we're like, what? We're not going to make their lives more stressful for the last bit. So we didn't like rush out, and we looked behind us, and it was, we had plenty of time. So we just kind of took our time getting out, charged up the stairs and finished.
Yeah. Ran up the stairs. I will say, like, running out of every transition, running into every transition, running all the way to the finish. I mean, I think we were fitter than we're giving ourselves credit for. We finished in 3 hours and 40 minutes and 30 seconds, which was good enough for 8th overall and 7th place men's team.
In an incredibly fast, stacked field.
Yeah, I mean, the winning team was 3:05 or something like that.
New course record.
And it was good. It was a good day for course records. But yeah, we were super happy with the result. Again, family was at the finish line, which was great. Got a bunch of photos. Herbert was there taking photos of us, and it was really, in terms of, again, the vibes were just awesome vibes.
Yeah.
I think it. Maybe we should just jump into final thoughts. I was asking you kind of like, okay, so we've done basically all of the super hard swim runs in North America and kind of where this one stacks up.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to put it in the Orcas Island kind of camp
because of the hills,
or the Catalina because of the hills. This one, I think, because of the technical nature of the trails, kind of felt like a very European race in a way.
Yeah.
Like sort of a, maybe
probably like
an Engadin type thing.
Yeah.
And it was just super, super fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. I was actually surprised, again, because I felt like I was just mentally not totally checked in for the race. I was surprised, like, how much fun, how challenging it was, how we sort of showed up and kind of did the work.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it was just an amazing race experience, and I kind of get it why, hey, this is a unique race, and there's all these teams, like, Phyllis Hold My Shower beer. They basically do 2 races a year. They do Lake James, they do this one.
Yeah.
And, we keep trying to get them to come out of the state and do Casco or something. But yeah, it was just super fun event, and just super proud of the way we sort of managed it.
It was really great. And I mean, walking around after, I didn't hear one bad thing being uttered about the race. Everyone was just outpouring with how much fun they had. What a great time. Oh, great views. The weather was, everything was
well
just
marked.
well marked.
It was kind of a confusing layout. It was not a problem.
I was a little bit concerned about that too. Like with this circuit situation, are we going to have to be worried about, lap 1 you go left, lap 2 you go right, or anything like that? Nope, they had it all sort of tidied up. But yeah, I mean, for what was supposed to be the final Swimrun NC, it was a really great day all around.
Yeah.
But before the race, Herbert announced that yes, this is the final one for this year. They're taking 2023 off. So no race next year, but they have decided they're bringing it back for 2024. They're going to mix it up a little bit, but everyone was really excited to hear that, and we were definitely excited to hear that. So if this race has sparked your interest, you're going to have to wait a bonus year, but definitely put Swimrun NC on your bucket list for sure, at least one time.
Totally. I think that if you are looking for
something different,
like a very quintessential swimrun experience, in the fact that the sport is super random, but it has really great community and really great people, and you go to these places where you'd never think you'd go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this race checks off a lot of those boxes, and you can really tell, I think, this is run by volunteers, Jan, Jeff, and Herbert, and you can tell like they're doing this for the love, and it just seeps into everything, from the way the aid stations are set up, from the way they do the awards, from the way they do the swag, from everything. It's just like everything's being done for the right reasons, and it makes you want to support them, and it makes you want to I would love to go back and do this race again. And I think if anyone's in the area, you should definitely check out Carolina Zipline Canopy Tours.
For sure.
They're great. Leave a good review on Yelp or whatever. But yeah, this is our penultimate race of the year. We got one more. We got Swimrun, Odyssey Swimrun Austin in a few weeks. We're really looking forward to that one. That'll be our 3rd time doing that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for a year where we've done a ton of racing and a ton of training, like if this was our last race of the year,
very happy with it.
No regrets.
No regrets on that, for sure.
No regrets.
Yeah. We had a great time.
It's great.
Look, we had to jam out of there. So our intention was to stay longer, press the flesh, have beers with people, chat, do our normal mingle, because there were so many great people that we don't see enough of. But we really had to jam out of there. We had flights to catch, and we flew back that night, and we arrived back in San Francisco at about 1 a.m. Something like that, and then work early on Monday. So
yeah. But hey, that's the life. That's the
life,
swimrun life.
It's the life of a micro-influencer. But yeah, again, great time. I'm really excited. The results are up. The photos are rolling out now on Facebook. There's just such an incredible amount of photographers at really just cool locations and everything. I will have one note. So we say on the show that Chris actually, he's the second fastest swimmer on the low tide boys. We'll just say that. This is the running joke. Mm-hmm. And I would say at this race, I led out of all, let's just say 3,000 yards. I led 2,900 of them.
Yeah, I led 100 yards.
Chris led 100. But for all the photos that Chris and I have, he's always in the front of the swims, which is total bullshit. I'm like, I do all the work leading everything, and then every photo, Chris is in the front, and I'm like, damn, people are going to think I'm a liar. So actually, we are currently, at the time of recording, Swimrun NC's profile picture. That's actually us in the water, and Chris, that was one of the 25-yard swims, and I'm poking my head out of the water like a gopher, like kind of looking around. One of the swims, I didn't even put my goggles on.
Yeah, the 25s.
Yeah, one of the 25s. I just kind of like jumped in, heads up, like 6 strokes, got out. But I can't wait to see the photos.
All my swims, all the swims I led, max effort.
You couldn't even get built up to max effort. It was like by the time you would get there, I
was like swimming out of the transition. It was great. It was great. And yeah, the photos are awesome. Again, can't recommend this race enough. Super fun. I wish we would have done it years ago.
Yeah.
Basically.
But
here we are.
That was it. Swimrun NC's in the books. We'll see it all at Austin. Giddy up.
Yo.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swimrun.
Sign up for our newsletter at lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at the Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any suggestions for the show or questions for us, send us a DM or an email at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of all our swimrun activities, podcast, and other stuff.
Yeah, other stuff.
Way
to keep it PG. Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Go for a run.
Then another swim.
Then another run.
And then another swim.
And then another run.
And then just keep going. Until you're done.
Or maybe can't
stop.
Stuff.